Oh God, I hate these kinds of movies. Um, hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Annabelle, which is of course a spin-off of The Conjuring. Now, I really liked The Conjuring, but despite that, I knew this movie was going to suck from the beginning. When you actually consider the character of Annabelle and what she does in The Conjuring, she doesn't seem particularly impressive outside of her freaky appearance. She moves shit around, she writes on the walls, she does pretty much everything that every other demonic entity to appear in a haunting movie can do, except at a much smaller scale. And plus, there's just going to be something so anticlimactic knowing that after this movie, she's going to be caught relatively easily. So that sort of undermines everything that's going to take place in this prequel. But, Annabelle was a popular character, so why wouldn't they make a movie about her, I guess? It's just one of those things I don't think fans and studios really consider. Furthermore, James Wan wasn't returning into the director's chair, and if James Wan couldn't recapture the awesomeness of The Conjuring for his follow-up film, Insidious Chapter 2, then what chance did the guy who gave us Mortal Kombat 2 have in making a worthy follow-up? The answer is none, but nobody really knew about that, so people had hopes, and I'm sure they were very disappointed. And shockingly, I too was disappointed despite my low expectations. The thing is, Annabelle on its surface level doesn't look like a terrible film because it is nicely shot. The director is James Wan's DOP, and you can definitely tell there are times where he is able to successfully emulate James Wan's style, and even though there was no real sense of atmosphere or mood throughout the entire film, it is still a nice looking movie. However, it is a very, very stale film, one that often just outright bored me. The problem I have with these kinds of movies is I never feel any sense of inspiration driving them. One of the things that really made me attached to The Conjuring is I did feel that there were actual writers behind that film, where they were trying to create an engaging film with likable characters, with story threads that you usually did not see in these kinds of films, as well as an eccentric tone, one that could be both funny and scary without any sense of or any real clash. Now, granted, it was straddling a very dangerous line, and that if you did not find the film's humor to be very funny, that would probably throw off the entire project for you. There are some people who really don't like The Conjuring, and I do understand why, but like it or not, I'd still think that you'd have to agree that there is more effort put into it than there is in most of these haunting flicks. But usually in these haunting flicks, they at least have a gimmick that separates them from the rest of the pack, if only in terms of the marketing campaign. So The Possession had its Jewish devil box thing. Nothing spectacularly new, but it's still, I can't recall seeing something like that in a movie before, even if the screenplay plays out as your conventional haunting flick. Or, Dark Skies was pretty much your typical Paranormal Activity knockoff, except they replaced the demons with aliens. Once again, nothing special, but at least that's something. Annabelle has nothing that separates it from the rest. It has a creepy doll. Gee, I've never seen one of those before. Otherwise, in terms of the script, it is just purely formulaic. It attempts to do nothing new, and even when it thinks it's being a little clever, it's only because Insidious did it first. For example, remember when Insidious came out and people praised how it was cool that the characters chose to move when they started realizing that there was something evil going on in the house. That was pretty admirable, and strangely, it wasn't very common in haunting movies up till then. Well, since Insidious did it first, the fact that Annabelle attempts the same thing just makes this feel more like an Insidious clone. In fact, I describe Annabelle as Insidious Light. So if you watched Insidious and you were thinking to yourself, man, I wish this movie was dumber, had less character development, worse acting, fewer scares, and just no sense of atmosphere or mood, then Annabelle is perfectly for you, because that's pretty much what it is. Both movies follow couples moving into new homes. Now in Insidious, they had a young boy, and in this film, the mother's pregnant, and she gives birth to an infant child. I don't even remember. I think she was a girl. So that's one difference. But the way it plays out is almost identical. They experience, paranormal activities. They attempt to move out. Doesn't work. This starts really straining their marriage. The husband, leaves to work and he doesn't want to come back as often, leaving the wife on her own. But luckily, she happens to know an expert who knows all this shit. That's one thing I don't like about this movie too, is that it's getting lazy in regards to how it wants to bring in these cliches. Usually they'd at least have the characters search out the expert in order to learn all this stuff. And Insidious, at least the expert knowing him did tie into the backstory of that movie, so it didn't bother me there. But here, they happen to live in the same apartment complex, and they happen to meet each other, and it just so happens that the expert lady just notices she's interested in a demonic book, and that's how Exposition Lady comes in. Just very, very lazy. Oh, so stop me if you've heard this one before. But the mother is the only one who encounters these supernatural events, but she does such a poor job at expressing herself that she comes across as crazy, and the father is naturally skeptical, claiming that she's only suffering from woman problems, and that's pretty much what he says. Gee, it's not like I've seen that set up in every other haunting flick ever made. Oh, God. The only cliche I think Annabelle missed was the bratty and rebellious teen, and they even sort of had a character who fit that role, which I didn't understand at all. So at one point, the main woman encounters these two kids, and the boy seems awfully hostile for no real reason. Why was that scene in there? I don't know. Those kids never show up again, even though they dedicate this big introduction to them. The only reason they seem to be present is so they could have this sort of creepy moment where she finds these bizarre drawings on the stairwell where they were at, but it doesn't really lead to anything other than just a red herring scare. So why? Were they supposed to be ghosts? That was just strange, total waste of time in a film that was already a bit too long. And it's not a very long movie. It just pads out its material to such an extent that it feels like it's much longer. Also, the film treats its audience like total morons. So there's this detective investigating a murder that the main couple have a connection to as witnesses. So she decides to call this detective over, and they have this conversation. Well, what was that conversation for? To reveal that the satanic-looking marks on her arm were in fact satanic. As if I needed to be told that. Thank you, movie. Thank you for stating the obvious. And, oh god, there was another one too that was kind of like, oh yeah, the tie-ins with The Conjuring. So it opens with that scene from The Conjuring where the nurses are describing their experiences with Annabelle. And there's that corny line, we're nurses, we're supposed to help people. Well, at the very end of this movie, there's the natural stinger where, it's going to bridge the events of Annabelle and The Conjuring. So you see the doll just sitting in some shop, and an old woman comes in and says, "Oh, I'm looking for a present for my granddaughter. She's a nurse. She loves to help people." You really had to be that on the nose. You couldn't have just said, "Oh, I'm looking for a present for my granddaughter," and we would have been smart enough to figure out who that was supposed to be. But no, they have to really dumb that one scene down to such an extent that I don't even know where to go with that. That was just bad. But this entire movie is bad. Characters are morons in order to drive the plot. So they're having this conversation about, the demon wants their souls, and the implication is that it's interested in the baby soul. We know that. The characters seem to know that based on subsequent interactions, but the priest never thinks to tell them that demons can't have baby souls. And if he had just explained that information, or explained that bit during a conversation where that should have come up, the entire third act wouldn't be able to exist. So that was really stupid too. So yeah, I really did not like the script. It's lazy, it's uninspired, and it's just dumb. That's the only times this script for Insidious Insidious Light, I should say, stands out. It's just when it's being really dumb. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of the audiences going to see Annabelle don't really care about the script. They just want to be scared. So is Annabelle scary? It did occasionally get under my skin. I really did like the home invasion sequence. There was some real clever framing there, and it's the only time where I felt the characters were in any real danger. I also really dug the stairwell sequence. Even though epileptics really won't like it due to the flashing lights, there was quite a bit of freaky imagery, and even if the scene was a little derivative, it was pretty effective. In fact, I think that would have made a better finale than the actual finale, but maybe I'll talk about that later. The problem is that the director, he just imitates James Wan, especially his work on Insidious. The scare tactics are identical to Insidious. The same music cues, the same jump scares. Even the ominous zoom-ins of the doll's face felt very derivative of Dead Silence. So there isn't a single original bone in this movie's body. I think the director didn't do a bad job at imitating James Wan's style, but I think it was bad that he tried to imitate James Wan's style because he seems so inferior in comparison, and all Annabelle does is remind you of other better movies. I also felt that the Annabelle was very awkwardly paced. In fact, I was often bored. Now, most haunting flicks have a very slow burn style of suspense. The scares start off relatively small, but they become bigger and more intense all the way up until they reach the third act, where the film goes all out in terms of being exciting and scary. Even bad haunting flicks like Mama, Dark Skies, Dark Mirror, The Possession, they all at least got that right. Well, in the case of Annabelle, I felt they showed too much too soon. In a lot of ways, it peaked at the home invasion scene, which is very early on, but they also established that there's something supernatural about Annabelle too quickly. So you get plenty of those zoom-ins and obvious signs that she can move, she can think, but it never seemed to get bigger after that. All the way up until the end of the movie, the director is relying so much on these creepy zoom-ins on Annabelle's face, and the fact that, oh, Annabelle moved, as if we haven't seen that a million times earlier in this movie. And I felt in a lot of cases it was just padding out the running time. But it really sunk in during the third act, which I thought was very unsatisfying and anticlimactic. Now, once again, like when you consider the ending of Insidious, you had all sorts of crazy ghosts walking through the house and attacking the characters. You had demonic beings harassing people. You had characters going into other dimensions, and it was pretty crazy stuff. Well, what does Annabelle have? Well, it has markings on the wall and ceiling, which we saw in the very first scene of The Conjuring and the very first scene of this movie. The mother acting crazy. Once again, we've seen that throughout the majority of this film. The doll being able to move and just looking all around spooky. Oh wow, thanks movie. We haven't seen that for the millionth time now. Actually, I should say the millionth and one time. And it just all the same shit we've seen earlier in the film, but not even, more intense, or epic. It's the kind of shit that the third act of this movie would have passed as the halfway point in any other haunting film. It definitely should not be the finale, but it bored me, and I cannot recommend this film. If it's maybe a little bit better than No Good Deed, just because there were moments where, yeah, the film did work, but those are only moments. As a whole, I thought the film sucked. So I would not watch Annabelle, even if you liked The Conjuring, even though you're going to go see it anyway. I'd know, because if I told myself not to go see Annabelle, and then explained all my reasons, I'd probably still go see it. But I did do a written review of this, so please read that. I also did a written review of something. Probably should have checked this before filming the review. What did I do? I did my re-review of And Then There Were None, the 1945 classic, as well as The Protector 2 with Tony Jaa, and my next one should be South Shaolin vs. North Shaolin, a relatively obscure kung fu movie. So please read all of those. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.